June 25, 1945. The sea lay flat and dark off the coast of Shikoku, Japan. A thin mist hovered above the black water, curling around the silhouette of a Balao-class submarine as it crept toward shore. Only the faint hum of its diesel engines broke the silence, carried away by the night wind. The moon, half hidden behind clouds, painted a cold silver sheen across the deck. Inside, the crew moved with quiet precision. Lookouts pressed against the conning tower, eyes straining through binoculars. Every wave, every ripple could mean detection. Every shadow might conceal an enemy patrol. Below, the diesel engines thrummed steadily, a heartbeat against the vast emptiness of the Pacific. Far inland, faint whistle signals drifted through the fog, a train rolling along the Japanese coastline, oblivious to the hunter waiting beneath the waves. Smoke curled above the engine, a ghostly signal in the darkness. The men on the submarine could see it through the periscope, a single line of cars carrying supplies and personnel, glinting faintly in the moonlight. Deck guns were polished, shells counted, firing positions rehearsed. Silence had a weight of expectation. One misstep could bring death. And yet, the tension was matched by resolve. This was the first and only U.S. ground attack on Japanese soil. A mission that combined daring, precision, and near-impossible timing. As the submarine edged closer, the line between hunter and hunted blurred. The night held its breath. The stage was set. History was about to unfold. By mid-1945, the Pacific War had reached a decisive stage. Japanese forces were increasingly confined to their home islands, the Philippines, and a shrinking network of Pacific outposts. The Allied strategy had shifted from island hopping to direct preparation for an invasion of Japan itself. Every operation was scrutinized for its ability to weaken Japanese supply lines, morale, and coastal defenses before the anticipated landings. The United States Navy, under Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, had taken full command of the Pacific submarine campaign. Submarines, once restricted to reconnaissance and convoy interdiction, now operated with greater autonomy, striking deep into Japanese waters. Admiral Charles A. Lockwood, commander of the Pacific Submarine Force, emphasized aggressive operations. He encouraged daring maneuvers along coastal waters, exploiting Japan's overextended defenses. Intelligence suggested that supply trains running along Shikoku's coastal railways carried troops, equipment, and essential materials. Disrupting these movements could slow reinforcements and damage both logistics and morale. Balao-class submarines were the tip of this strategy. Their diesel-electric engines allowed for quiet approaches, and they carried deck guns capable of shore bombardment. They were not designed for large-scale land assaults. Their role was usually to strike enemy shipping. Yet, late in the war, the line between naval engagement and direct intervention blurred. Submarine commanders had become adept at improvisation, using whatever firepower they possessed to exploit weak points along Japan's fragile supply chain. Japanese forces on Shikoku were stretched thin. Coastal defense units relied on small garrisons, with limited artillery and minimal radar coverage. The Imperial Japanese Navy had largely evacuated submarines to defend key ports and counter Allied advances elsewhere. Army units guarding the Oi rail lines were alert but unprepared for an attack originating from the sea itself. The perception of the homeland as untouchable contributed to complacency, while shortages of fuel and ammunition constrained rapid response. Strategically, the mission to strike the train carried multiple implications. On a tactical level, it tested the limits of submarine operations in near-shore environments. Shallow waters, shifting tides, and rocky coastlines could easily trap a vessel. Operationally, it was a psychological signal. The Japanese home islands, long insulated from direct attack outside of air raids, now faced an enemy capable of reaching inland targets. The stakes were not simply destruction of materiel. They were demonstration of reach, daring, and the inevitability of Allied dominance. Leadership decisions reflected this dual purpose. Lockwood issued the orders for coastal reconnaissance, instructing captains to identify vulnerable transport routes. Nimitz approved missions that pushed submarines into riskier territory, confident in the growing superiority of sonar, radar, and crew experience. Commanders were expected to exercise judgment, balancing aggression against the survival of their crews. Tactical innovation, using periscopes to guide deck gunfire, calculating shell trajectory over uneven terrain, timing attacks with moonlight and tide, was as critical as courage. The combination of technology, strategy, and human expertise created a singular context for the Shikoku mission. The Balao-class submarine would operate at the limits of its design. The Japanese defenders, unaware of the approaching threat, represented both an opportunity and a test of Allied ingenuity. Every factor, from tide charts to gunnery precision to crew endurance, would shape the outcome. In this moment, late June 1945, the Pacific War's focus was narrowing. Japan's home islands were no longer untouchable, and a single submarine could write a new chapter in the history of naval warfare. In early June 1945, intelligence reports began to converge on a single vulnerability along Shikoku's southern coast, a coastal railway line frequently used to transport troops, weapons, and raw materials between key Japanese cities. Reconnaissance flights had photographed supply trains moving along these tracks, while signals intercepts provided additional confirmation of schedules and cargo. For the U.S. Navy, this line represented a rare, high-value target, one that could be struck directly from the sea with a well-placed submarine attack. The assigned vessel, a Balao-class submarine, had spent weeks preparing for the mission. Crew members ran drills in nearshore navigation, deck gun operation, and emergency surfacing procedures. Officers studied tide tables and lunar phases to determine optimal timing for the approach. Each decision mattered. Shallow waters increased the risk of grounding, while the smallest miscalculation could expose the sub to Japanese patrol craft or coastal artillery. The men understood the stakes. For most, this was unlike any previous mission. No standard convoy to ambush, no predictable open ocean engagement. Every action had to be measured, precise, and discreet. Morale aboard the submarine was a mixture of tension and disciplined focus. Submarine service in the Pacific was notoriously grueling. Months underwater, cramped quarters, constant vigilance against depth charges. Now, facing a mission requiring direct coastal engagement, crews were acutely aware of their vulnerability. Yet there was also pride and determination. To operate on Japanese soil, even briefly, was unprecedented for U.S. forces. The captain emphasized calm and focus. Every crew member knew their task and the consequences of failure. Meanwhile, Japanese defenses were strained. Coastal garrisons were thinly staffed, relying on lookouts and sporadic patrols. Supplies were limited, and the majority of trained personnel were deployed elsewhere, defending industrial centers or preparing for an expected Allied invasion. Trains ran on strict schedules, but without heavy security, reflecting a belief that the surrounding sea posed little threat. Local civilians, familiar with routine transport, remained unaware of any imminent danger. In these conditions, even a minor disruption could cascade into significant operational consequences. Logistics further shaped the mission. The submarine carried limited ammunition for its deck gun, enough for 1 or 2 decisive volleys. Every shell counted. Fuel reserves were calculated to allow for quick retreat and extended submerged operations if detection occurred. The captain relied heavily on timing, approaching under the cover of darkness, surfacing at precisely the right distance from shore, and aligning the sub to achieve a clear line of fire. Weather would also play a critical role. Fog could conceal movement, but reduce visibility for targeting. Calm seas allowed precise positioning, but left the vessel more exposed to watchful eyes. Training and preparation extended to technical coordination. The periscope had been fitted with range-finding markers. Targeting tables had been recalculated for coastal bombardment. Deck gun crews rehearsed loading and firing, practicing rapid sequences with the same precision used in convoy attacks. Communication protocols were reviewed. Radio silence had to be maintained to avoid interception. Yet any call for support required an exact sequence of signals. The mission demanded both technical mastery and nerves of steel. By mid-June, the IE submarine departed its patrol area, moving south along Japan's coastline. Reconnaissance had confirmed train movements and shore conditions. The crew monitored depth gauges, tide changes, and enemy signals. Every hour brought the vessel closer to the target. The Japanese, unaware of the submarine's proximity, continued their routines along the coast. Civilians, soldiers, and train crews maintained the illusion of normalcy, oblivious to the approaching threat. In these final hours before engagement, tension and anticipation coexisted. The submarine, though small, represented a profound shift. The U.S. Navy now had the ability to strike Japanese soil directly. Every calculation, every practice drill, every observation of the enemy contributed to the moment that would soon arrive. The stage was set, the crew prepared, and the night held a single question. Could this vessel, operating at the edge of danger, succeed where no American unit had gone before? The crew of the Balao-class submarine moved like a single organism, each man attuned to the rhythm of the vessel and the night. On deck, the gun crews adjusted their positions, the cold metal of the deck beneath their fingers vibrating faintly with the submarine's engine hum. Lookouts scanned the horizon, binoculars pressed to their eyes, straining to detect the faintest glint of steel or the reflection of lanterns along the shore. Every shadow could be a sentinel, every ripple a warning. Below, the captain and officers huddled around charts illuminated by a single flickering lamp. Tide tables, lunar phases, and compass bearings had been memorized, recalculated dozens of times. Timing was everything. A second too early could betray the submarine's presence. A second too late could let the train vanish into darkness. Orders were crisp, precise. Each man knew his responsibility, each action a step in a chain that could mean success or death. Psychological pressure weighed heavily. Submarine service in the Pacific was already brutal. Long hours in cramped, humid quarters, the constant threat of depth charges, and the silence of isolation. Now, the crew faced an entirely new risk: shore bombardment. They were exposing themselves in shallow water, risking detection by patrol craft, searchlights, and coastal artillery. The tension was nearly tactile, a quiet vibration in the stomach, a tightening in the chest. Fear was acknowledged, but never allowed to dominate. It was a controlled, professional vigilance, honed through months of patrols and emergency drills. On the bridge, the captain calculated approach speed against the IE. Incoming tide, adjusting trim to maintain stability. He had to anticipate the train's velocity and timing. A moving target at night, obscured by fog, with only the periscope for guidance. Crew members prepared ammunition, checking each round for defects. The rhythm of loading and securing shells was methodical, almost ceremonial, a practiced choreography designed to maximize efficiency under stress. Communication within the submarine was measured, minimal. One man relayed periscope observations to the captain. Another coordinated the gun crew. Below, engine room personnel monitored depth and battery levels. Every voice carried authority. Every gesture signaled intent. Even minor errors could cascade into failure. This was not improvisation. It was disciplined, rehearsed action under the weight of extreme stakes. Tactical decisions extended beyond immediate targets. The captain considered retreat routes, submerged escape paths, and contingencies. If the train was destroyed but enemy reinforcements arrived, every choice balanced aggression with survival. The crew understood the paradox. They were executing a mission of audacity, yet their greatest strength lay in restraint, precision, and timing. The human element, the courage, calculation, and fear was inseparable from the technical. Each shell fired, each adjustment of speed, each glance through the periscope was informed by months of training, experience, and mutual trust. A single misstep could trigger catastrophic failure. The sub could run aground, the crew could be exposed, or the mission could be compromised entirely. Yet the men pressed forward. Their senses were heightened, each sound amplified, the faint clink of shell casings, the whisper of the wind across the deck, the subtle vibration of the hull through the water. Every second was loaded with tension, anticipation, and the weight of responsibility. They were not soldiers on distant islands. They were intruders on the Japanese mainland, poised to strike in a way no American unit had before. The balance of fear, focus, and courage defined every movement. In this convergence of human skill and tactical discipline, the stage was ready. The crew's training and nerves would meet the realities of war, and the moment of action, brief, violent, decisive, was about to arrive. Every heartbeat, every calculated choice carried them closer to a historic confrontation that no one aboard would forget. The submarine itself was more than steel and machinery. It was a precision instrument, a mechanical partner in an unprecedented operation. The Balao-class hull was designed to withstand the crushing depths of the Pacific. But in these shallow coastal waters, every meter mattered. The diesel-electric engines, capable of silent, submerged movement, now carried the vessel into enemy territory with calculated restraint. The deck gun, ordinarily used against merchant shipping, was repurposed for direct shore engagement, its barrels trained on a moving target, a train miles inland, guided only by periscope calculations. Gun crews relied on precise measurements and experience. Each shell's trajectory had to account for distance, wind, tide, and even the rolling of the submarine itself. Range tables, adjusted for the coastal gradient, allowed officers to anticipate where each shell would land. Mechanical reliability was critical. A misfire or jammed breach could endanger the crew and nullify the mission. In preparation, gunners had inspected and polished every moving part, ensuring rounds could be loaded and fired with near-perfect timing. Enemy reaction was a constant variable. Japanese soldiers manning coastal posts and railway personnel were trained to respond to unusual disturbances, but the appearance of a submarine surfacing close to shore was outside their expectation. The train itself, running on a schedule, was a linear and predictable element, a rare vulnerability in an otherwise secure logistical network. Calculations had to account not only for mechanics, but for human behavior, the speed at which the train could halt, the response time of crew members, and the potential intervention of nearby sentries. Beyond mechanics and precision, the moral dimension weighed heavily. Submarine attacks were generally confined to naval targets, Yet this mission extended into territory inhabited by civilians. Officers and crew understood the implications. Strikes could harm non-combatants, damage infrastructure, and leave psychological scars on both sides. Orders emphasized discrimination, timing, and targeted fire. Even in wartime, the decision to engage a moving train required balancing operational objectives against ethical considerations. Every crew member carried that awareness silently, alongside. The technical burdens of the mission. Technological innovation was central to the attack's feasibility. Periscope optics had been adapted for coastal observation. Gyroscopic targeting allowed for rapid alignment of the deck gun. Acoustic sensors monitored nearby vessels. The submarine operated as a node of combined intelligence and firepower, integrating observation, calculation, and execution. It was an early example of precision strike in constrained conditions, relying on coordination between human judgment and mechanical reliability. The attack's broader implications extended far beyond the immediate target. Striking Japanese soil directly, even in a limited, tactical sense, sent a message of reach and inevitability. For the Japanese, the apparent invulnerability of the home islands was now violated. Strategically, it demonstrated that the U.S. Navy could project force in unconventional ways, forcing the enemy to reconsider defensive deployments, patrol patterns, and vulnerability of coastal infrastructure. Mechanically sound, morally considered, and operationally daring, the submarine embodied a new approach to late-war engagements. Every lever pulled, every shell fired, every calculation made was part of a system where human skill and mechanical precision merged. The crew's nerves, experience, and judgment intertwined with the vessel's capabilities, producing an outcome neither could achieve alone. The submarine was no longer merely a ship. It was an extension of tactical thought, a tool through which the limits of engineering and human resolve would be tested. In this convergence, the moment of engagement approached. Machines were ready, humans alert, and the moral and tactical calculus complete. The next hours would reveal whether preparation, ingenuity, and courage could overcome the unpredictable chaos of war. The submarine crept closer to the shore under a veil of fog, the hull cutting silently through dark water. The night was heavy, humid, with the distant whistle of the train echoing faintly against cliffs and tree lines. Each man on deck felt the tension in his bones, the vibration of the engines beneath their feet, the weight of every decision pressing against them. Even the smallest sound, metal scraping against metal, a deck hatch shifting, could signal exposure to the enemy. Through the periscope, the train appeared, a single line of cars gliding along the track, faintly illuminated by lanterns and moonlight. The engine puffed rhythmically, smoke curling upward in silver ribbons. Timing was critical. The captain calculated distance, relative speed, and trajectory, issuing orders with measured calm. "Gun crews, ready. Bearings set. Fire on my mark." The words were short, precise, devoid of emotion, carrying the authority of experience and necessity. The deck gun crew moved swiftly. Shells rattled as they were loaded into the breech, each round weighed and checked. The mechanical rhythm was rehearsed, yet every repetition was charged with human tension. Crew members braced against the cold steel deck, muscles tight, eyes scanning the shore for unexpected patrols. Seconds stretched, each heartbeat measured and controlled. The vessel's slight roll threatened accuracy, and the captain adjusted trim, fine-tuning the sub's alignment with meticulous attention. The first volley of shells struck the earth beside the tracks. Explosions sent dirt and debris into the fog, the train shaking as cars jolted under the impact. Smoke and fire mingled, briefly illuminating the night. The crew held their nerve. Each gunner recalculated angles, adjusted for recoil, and maintained rhythm. The second salvo hit with precision. Wheels derailed, cars overturned, and the engine ground to a halt, steam hissing as pressure vents opened. Shouts rose from the train crew, distant but audible over the wind and water. Soldiers scrambled to assess damage, their movements slowed by confusion and darkness. From the submarine, the scene was fleeting and fragmented. Glimpses of figures diving for cover, sparks from twisted metal, the acrid smoke of burning fuel. The attack lasted mere minutes, yet every second carried weight. Accuracy, timing, and human resolve combined to execute a strike few had imagined possible. Tension remained high. The submarine had to remain visible just long enough to ensure the train's destruction, but not so long as to invite retaliation. Coastal artillery positions were unknown. Patrols could appear without warning. Crew members monitored every signal, every sound. Lookouts strained to detect distant footsteps on the shore, the flash of lanterns, or the faint rumble of engines from Japanese reinforcement. Amid this, radio silence was absolute. No reports, no signals, no calls for guidance. Success depended entirely on human skill, coordination, and mechanical reliability. Every man performed his role with methodical precision. The captain calculating distances and bearing, the gun crews loading and firing, the lookouts scanning, the engine room adjusting depth and trim. The final shells struck with devastating effect. The train was derailed, cars crumpled against the embankment, smoke rising into the night sky. The submarine's crew watched for signs of pursuit, enemy reinforcements, or artillery. The moment was both victory and exposure. For a brief, intense period, the convergence of human courage, tactical planning, and mechanical precision had created a singular strike, one that no American force had ever executed on Japanese soil. As the smoke drifted into the fog, the submarine began its careful withdrawal. The attack had been executed, yet the outcome, beyond the immediate destruction, remained uncertain. Eyes scanned the coastline, tension lingering as adrenaline ebbed. The operation had succeeded in its mechanical precision, but the full consequences, enemy reaction, crew reflection, strategic significance, were still unfolding. The smoke from the derailed train hung thick over the tracks, curling into the night like a spectral warning. On the submarine's deck, the crew held their positions, watching intently for any sign of retaliation. The attack had unfolded with meticulous precision, yet there was no room for complacency. Every man knew that in these shallow coastal waters, the margin for error was razor-thin. A single patrol craft, a hidden artillery emplacement, or a misjudged maneuver could trap them against the rocks or shore. From the periscope, glimpses of Japanese soldiers moving toward the wreckage revealed both shock and confusion. Some attempted to right the cars, others tried to organize the surviving crew into a defensive posture. But the train's destruction was complete. Steam hissed from the crippled engine, sparks flew from twisted metal, and smoke choked the rails. The calculated timing of the salvo had rendered the train immobile, cutting off the supply line in an instant. Below deck, the officers worked silently, confirming targeting data and monitoring depth and engine performance. Every lever and gauge was scrutinized. The realization set in. The mission had succeeded beyond expectations. For a submarine crew trained primarily to sink ships, the first direct attack on Japanese soil had been executed flawlessly. The combination of human skill, mechanical precision, and tactical foresight had produced a decisive result. Emotion was controlled but palpable. Crew members exchanged brief nods. The tension in their shoulders eased fractionally. Relief and pride mixed with the persistent undercurrent of fear. Even in victory, the threat of discovery remained. Japanese reinforcements could arrive at any moment. The submarine could not linger. Yet for a few precious minutes, the impossible had been achieved. The tactical implications were immediately clear. A single, small vessel had disrupted Japanese logistics, demonstrating that even the home islands were vulnerable. For Japanese forces, the attack would ripple outward. The psychological shock of a submarine striking inland, combined with the tangible loss of a supply train, forced reconsideration of coastal defense deployment. Commanders would need to guard against attacks previously considered improbable, stretching their already limited resources. For the Americans, the realization extended beyond tactical victory. Reports would confirm the effectiveness of combining periscope-guided artillery with precise human coordination. Lessons in timing, range calculation, and crew discipline would inform future operations, even if no further direct ground assaults were planned. The engagement had tested the limits of submarine operations, blending mechanical innovation with human decision-making under extreme conditions. As the submarine began its careful withdrawal, the crew observed the aftermath with sober acknowledgement. The train lay in ruins, soldiers and civilians alike reacting with shock. In the dim light, the scale of destruction was clear yet contained. A precise, targeted strike executed with intent. The emotional weight of the operation, fear, tension, relief, and pride, etched itself into every crew member's memory. The moment of shift was complete. The mission had crossed the threshold from action to consequence. The enemy had been struck, where few thought possible. The crew had proven their skill under extraordinary circumstances, and the submarine, now retreating into deeper waters, carried with it the combined proof of human courage, mechanical ingenuity, and the audacity of strategic calculation. The operation was over, yet its resonance would extend far beyond this single night. The narrative of a submarine striking Japanese soil, of men executing an unprecedented and precise attack under immense risk, had been written in smoke, steel, and fire. Dawn broke over the southern coast of Shikoku, revealing the wreckage left in the submarine's wake. The train lay twisted across the tracks, its cars crumpled and burned, smoke curling into the early morning sky. Soldiers scrambled amid the debris, tending to the wounded, salvaging what they could, and attempting to restore order. The attack had caused casualties, several railway personnel and a handful of soldiers killed instantly, others injured by splintered wood and exploding fuel tanks. From the submarine, the crew watched as the Japanese response unfolded in fragments. Lookouts reported movement along the cliffs and nearby roads, small detachments hastily assembling, trying to pursue the intruder. Yet the Balao-class vessel had already begun its withdrawal, slipping silently back into deeper water. Patrol boats were alerted too late to intercept. Artillery positions could only observe the smoke from afar. In tactical terms, the strike was a clean success. Within the submarine, the mood was a mixture of relief and reflection. Crew members assessed the ID operation. Shells fired accurately, the target destroyed, no men lost, and no vessel damaged. Reports were prepared to log the event, noting every detail: trajectory calculations, timing of shell impacts, enemy reactions, and environmental conditions. The operation would be cited in debriefings as a demonstration of precision, courage, and improvisation under extreme conditions. For the Japanese, the immediate psychological effect was significant. The notion of inviolable homeland territory was shattered. Local commanders faced the dual burden of tending to casualties while re-evaluating coastal security measures. Civilians, previously unaware of the submarine's proximity, now confronted The stark reality that the enemy could strike directly at Japanese soil. While strategically limited in scope, the attack delivered a clear and unprecedented message. Nowhere along the coast was entirely safe. Even in these initial hours, the operation's success had repercussions. Communications within Japanese command networks documented the unusual nature of the attack, prompting discussions about the vulnerability of supply lines and the need for enhanced surveillance. On the American side, reports highlighted not only the mechanical and tactical precision, but the human discipline that allowed the mission to succeed without compromise. The immediate aftermath, smoke, twisted metal, and anxious movement, stood as proof of a mission executed at the intersection of daring, skill, and opportunity. For the crew, it was a moment of both accomplishment and sobering awareness. The risks had been immense, the results decisive, and the lesson clear. The Pacific War could touch the Japanese homeland in ways few had imagined. In the weeks following, the attack, reports, and declassified documents confirmed the broader impact of the strike. Though limited in scale, the operation became a case study in unconventional warfare. The train's destruction had disrupted supply lines along Shikoku's coast, delaying troop movements and materiel shipments at a critical juncture. Commanders, now wary of submarine operations near shore, diverted scarce resources to reinforce coastal surveillance. Patrol schedules changed, garrison rotations tightened, and defensive positions were re-evaluated. Small adjustments with disproportionate strain on an already overstretched system. For the U.S. Navy, the mission validated late-war tactical innovation. Submarines, long regarded primarily as commerce raiders, demonstrated the capacity for precise, inland interdiction when intelligence, technology, and crew expertise converged. Lessons in timing, trajectory calculations, and periscope-guided, fire-informed subsequent training programs, emphasizing adaptability in unpredictable theaters of operation. The operation underscored the value of detailed reconnaissance, disciplined crew execution, and the integration of mechanical precision with human judgment. The psychological dimension extended beyond logistics. The knowledge that American forces had struck the Japanese mainland, however briefly, reverberated through command circles and morale assessments. It illustrated the reach of U.S. naval power and reinforced the inevitability of Allied dominance. Conversely, Japanese military planners confronted an uncomfortable truth. Even the home islands, considered invulnerable, could be penetrated. Internal communications reflect a mix of shock, disbelief, and grudging respect for the audacity and effectiveness of the strike. Historians later noted the symbolic significance of the attack. It was the only recorded instance of a U.S. ground-level strike on Japanese soil executed by a submarine, blurring the lines between naval warfare and direct ground engagement. In operational manuals and post-war analyses, the Shikoku raid became an example of leveraging limited resources for maximum strategic and psychological effect. The lessons applied not only to late World War II planning, but also influenced early Cold War concepts of precision strike and unconventional operations. Ultimately, the strike's long-term outcome was not measured solely by derailed railcars or disrupted schedules. Its legacy lay in demonstrating the convergence of human skill, mechanical capability, and tactical audacity. For both the Americans and the Japanese, the event reshaped assumptions, forcing a reconsideration of strategy, risk, and the boundaries of combat operations. The echoes of that foggy night in June 1945 would persist in naval doctrine, historical memory, and the annals of daring, precise military action. The strike on Shikoku was brief, violent, and precise, a calculated moment in the final months of a global conflict. It was a reminder that warfare is measured not only in territory gained or enemy casualties inflicted, but in the audacity and discipline of those who carry out missions at the edge of possibility. For the submarine crew, every decision, every calculation, every moment of tension reflected a balance between courage and restraint. They had operated under extreme risk, executing a maneuver never attempted before, and they emerged with both success and an acute awareness of danger. Mechanics and human judgment intertwined in ways that blurred the distinction between man and machine. The vessel responded to human commands with precision, but without the skill, nerves, and coordination of the crew, the operation would have failed. Likewise, human resolve alone could not have achieved the result without the technological advantage provided by periscopes, deck guns, and navigational systems. The mission stands as a testament to the interdependence of innovation, training, and discipline in modern warfare. On the other side, the attack offered a stark lesson to the Japanese defenders. No terrain, no schedule, no coastal garrison could guarantee safety. A single, small force could alter logistics, disrupt morale, and challenge assumptions about the homeland's inviolability. In the broader scope of the Pacific War, the Shikoku strike remains a singular example of ingenuity and precision. As the submarine slipped silently back into the waters of the Pacific, the night closed over the ruined tracks. Smoke drifted toward the horizon. Men returned to their stations. History had been made quietly, deliberately, and irrevocably. Etched, not in monuments, but in steel, courage, and the disciplined execution of the improbable.